Goedenavond, welkom bij het programma dat vanavond voor de allerlaatste keer onderzoekt, ontmaskert, aanklaagt en verdedigt.
Peter R. Vries was a true icon of journalism, celebrated for his unparalleled courage in exposing corruption, solving cold cases, and upholding the truth. With his unwavering commitment and unrelenting pursuit of justice, he has become a legend in the Netherlands and beyond. For decades, he has fearlessly taken on some of the most challenging and perilous stories, earning the profound respect and admiration of both his colleagues and the public. From a young age, it was clear that Peter was not like other children. While his siblings eagerly went off to school each day, Peter found the entire experience to be a chore. He felt that he was being forced into a position that he did not enjoy, and it was a source of constant frustration for him. His parents, who were deeply religious, made matters even more difficult for Peter. Going to church every week felt like a punishment, and he could not understand why he was being forced to attend. As a child, he was very critical of everything about religion, and it became a frequent point of discussion and argument between him and his parents. Peter would ask why did he have to go to church, even though he didn't feel particularly religious. But his father's reply was always the same, because I say so, and that is that. Despite his difficult relationship with his parents and his rebellious streak, Peter was a self-sufficient child. In his family, the ability to fix things for yourself was highly valued. If your bike had a flat tire, you either repaired it or walked. And if you were beaten by bullies, you had to stand up for yourself and fight back. Peter's youth was marked by rebellion and skepticism, but it was also the foundation for a career dedicated to seeking the truth and fighting for justice. His critical mind, independent spirit, and willingness to stand up for what he believed in would make him a hero to millions, and an inspiration to those who refused to back down in the face of adversity. As a crime reporter, he had seen the worst of humanity. Peter covered stories of unspeakable violence, corruption, and greed, but throughout his career, he always held on to two core values: integrity and justice. Peter was widely recognized and celebrated for his exceptional work ethic, unparalleled ambition, and unwavering dedication to justice. His passion for solving cases that had been abandoned or dismissed by the police and justice system was particularly noteworthy, as he was determined to ensure that victims and their relatives received the closure and justice they deserved. He worked with families who had been devastated by tragedy. They've lost loved ones to senseless acts of violence, and they're desperate for answers and closure. Not only did he stand by their side throughout the entire ordeal, but he also remained in contact with them long after the crime had been solved. Throughout his career, Peter covered some of the most high-profile criminal cases in the Netherlands. But despite the media frenzy that often surrounded these big cases, Peter never lost sight of the smaller, more personal cases that mattered just as much to the families involved. In fact, he once expressed a deeply held belief that every case he took on was equally important, regardless of the victim's background or social status. Whether the victim was a high-profile politician, an esteemed professor, a police officer, or a sex worker, it made no difference to Peter. He recognized that each individual's life was valuable and deserving of justice, regardless of the circumstances surrounding their death. He understood that for the families and loved ones left behind, the pain and loss of a loved one is equally devastating, regardless of who they were in life. It was this empathy and compassion that drove Peter to tirelessly pursue the truth, no matter how difficult or dangerous the road ahead. Peter expressed his deep-rooted passion for solving cases that involved innocent individuals, such as children or individuals who had no connection to criminal activity. He found such cases to be the most compelling, driven by his desire to seek justice for those who had no involvement in the criminal underworld. Despite covering high-profile and challenging cases, Peter had a special inclination towards solving cases that involved innocent victims, particularly those who were children or victims of circumstance. He found his cases to be especially meaningful and fulfilling, as they spoke to his core values of seeking justice and closure for those who were most vulnerable and had no connection to criminal activity.
En ik vind het zelf ook een onverdraaglijke gedachte dat soort zaken onopgelost blijven. Dat ouders met dat soort vragen blijven zitten de rest van hun leven. Dus dan kan ik het niet loslaten. Bijt ik me erin vast, met als gevolg dat je dan soms 10, 20, 25 jaar met een zaak bezig bent.
Peter was known for his empathy and compassion towards the families of victims, no matter how small or large the case was. He understood that for the families involved, the pain and loss were just as real, whether it was a missing child or a high-profile murder case. One of the most famous cases he worked on was the disappearance of Natalie Holloway, an American teenager who vanished while on vacation in Aruba. Despite numerous searches and investigations, no one had been able to solve the mystery of what happened to her. But in 2008, Peter took up the case and began conducting his own investigation. Using his unparalleled investigative skills, Peter was able to uncover new evidence and leads that had never been discovered before. One of the key suspects in the case was Joran, a Dutch man who had been seen with Natalie on the night she went missing. Despite being questioned multiple times by police, Joran had never been charged with any crime. But Peter was not satisfied with the lack of progress in the case. He decided to launch a sting operation, using hidden cameras and microphones to gather evidence against Joran. And finally, a lot of hard work and dedication. Joran made some statements while being recorded on hidden camera that explained the circumstances of Metali's disappearance. Peter was able to solve the case and bring closure to the family. For Peter, it was never a question of which case he was proudest of, because he didn't believe in comparing them. To him, each case was unique, but all were equally tragic. Peter's work as a crime reporter required him to witness the darkest aspects of human behavior, and in each case, he felt the weight of the victim's pain and the family's agony. For him, every case was an opportunity to help, to bring closure and justice, and to alleviate some of the pain that families were experiencing. In his view, all cases were equally deserving of his attention, dedication, and compassion. But when he was really questioned which case he was most proud of, it would be the murder case of Patton. Peter dedicated 7 years of his life and 44 TV episodes on finding the truth, investigating and exposing the flaws in the justice system that led to the wrongful conviction of 2 innocent men. It took an excruciatingly long time for the justice system to admit their fault, despite mounting evidence. It was this unwillingness to acknowledge their error that prolonged the agony for the victims' families and the wrongfully accused. Eventually, the authorities had to confront their mistake and take responsibility for their failings. This admission served as a wake-up call for the justice system, who then understood the gravity of their responsibilities and the consequences of their inaction. It was a sobering realization that they must remain vigilant, always willing to investigate and question themselves. The Heineken kidnapping case refers to the abduction of beer magnate Freddy Heineken and his driver. The kidnappers demanded a ransom of 35 million Dutch guilders, about 16 million euros, which was one of the largest ransoms in history at the time. After 3 weeks of negotiations, the ransom was paid. Anonymous tips led to 3 of the 4 suspects, who were followed, which led towards a warehouse, where Heineken and his driver were held behind a hidden wall. The kidnappers were later apprehended and sentenced to long prison terms. The case received widespread media attention and remains one of the most famous and infamous crimes in Dutch history. Peter first reached out to Cor through a letter during the Heineken kidnapping trial, hoping to gather more information about the case. As they continued to correspond, their relationship grew stronger. Peter even proposed the idea of writing a book about the case together, but Cor initially declined. After the trial was over, Cor eventually agreed to the book, and they spent a lot of time together during its creation. As they worked on the project, Peter and Cor formed a close friendship that lasted until Cor's assassination. Peter faced frequent criticism for maintaining a close relationship with a convicted criminal, and despite acknowledging the importance of maintaining professional boundaries, he struggled to distance himself. He admitted that friendship, much like falling in love, is an inexplicable force that cannot always be controlled. Although he understood the skepticism and disapproval of others, he remained friends with Cor until he eventually got assassinated. Undoubtedly, Peter has been involved in numerous noteworthy cases. However, mentioning all of them in this video would be nearly impossible. Following the conclusion of his show, Peter took on various other projects. Among them was Across the Border, which involved investigating violations of children's rights. He also delved into the issue of cyberbullying in another program. Additionally, he hosted a talk show titled The Council Chamber, where he engaged in discussions with the best lawyers, judges, and victims about actual criminal cases. Peter once harbored the ambition of starting his own political party with a sharp focus on safety issues. Not to forget, the fiery speeches of right-wing politician Wilders often left him infuriated and without an adequate platform for rebuttal. Despite his best efforts, Peter's electoral hopes fell short of his aspirations, and he ultimately shelved his political ambitions. Peter was known for his willingness to engage in tough discussions on television, especially when it came to topics related to crime and justice. As an experienced crime reporter, he understood the importance of shedding light on difficult issues and challenging conventional perspectives. He often used his platform to bring attention to controversial cases, speak out against politicians, expose injustice, corruption, and abuse of power. In some cases, the discussions he led on television could be uncomfortable or challenging for the other guests, as Peter was not afraid to ask difficult questions or to confront people who were evasive or dishonest. However, his approach was always respectful, professional, and rooted in a deep sense of integrity and dedication to his work. He believed that by shining a light on uncomfortable truths, he could help raise awareness and promote positive change in society. Those close to him say, if you work this long together and there is some kind of a connection, then few words are needed to know how Peter wanted something to happen. While it's true that Peter was a demanding man, but it's something that kept the team sharp. Nothing makes an episode before Peter has seen it, but those who didn't really know Peter always wondered if he was a difficult man to work with. But whenever the employees were traveling with Peter, he was a very gentle and kind man. With the cameraman, for example, you encounter such strange and unique situations that it creates an everlasting bond. That Peter is willing to go the extra mile for his employees was something the general public wasn't really aware of, as an employee's contract was about to expire, with no intention of extension. Peter went above and beyond by threatening to tear up his own contract unless the employee's contract was renewed. He made it clear that if the employee did not receive his contract, they would not see Peter again. Surprisingly, that same day the employee was granted their contract renewal. It's rare to find individuals who would go to such lengths for their employees. Throughout his career, Peter faced numerous threats and attacks, but he refused to back down. He believed that it was his duty as a journalist to hold those in power accountable and to give a voice to the voiceless. And he did so with the courage and tenacity that inspired many. Peter's uncompromising dedication to his work as a crime reporter made him a marked man, with numerous enemies in the criminal underworld, targeting him in their hit lists, although he would often make light of the situation, by humorously expressing his preference for flowers over death threats. The reality was that this was an occupational hazard that came with the territory. As a crime reporter, one must possess a level of fearlessness and be willing to confront danger head-on. But for those who have the courage and determination, the rewards of uncovering the truth and exposing criminal activity can be immeasurable. One of the largest cases against the criminal underworld was happening. The Dutch-Moroccan criminal organization, named Macro Mafia, was on trial for a string of murders and attempted murders in the period of 2015 to 2017. This trial, dubbed the Marengo trial, is not only intriguing for its chilling crimes, but also for its name, which was chosen by a computer at random and is related to a fabric called Marengo. When the Crown witness's brother was murdered, Peter rose to the occasion and became the witness's confidant. Despite having a history of serious crimes, Peter believed that by testifying against his former gang members, he was doing the right thing and therefore deserved any assistance he could get to overcome this ordeal. Although fully aware of the danger involved in his actions, including the shocking murders of a lawyer and the witness's brother, he chose to proceed. He declined personal protection as he believed it would hinder the progress of his work. Talking to criminals and such would be quite difficult if you are being followed by the police. But according to his son, he was open to other forms of security. Despite receiving death threats, he wanted to maintain his daily activities. And this was not the first time he had encountered such a situation. Although it may sound cynical, he said that he learned to live with it. Tragically, Peter was shot and critically wounded in 2021 while leaving a television studio in Amsterdam. Despite the best efforts of medical professionals, he passed away 9 days later. Accomplices spread images on social media with the intention of further inciting fear towards those who oppose them. His death sent shockwaves through the Netherlands and beyond, with many mourning the loss of a true hero and champion of justice. Even the king and queen spoke about the horrifying event. Peter had written a farewell letter to his ex-wife, in case he was unable to bid her farewell at the end. While the contents of the letter remained private, the family confirmed that they hold it dear and revisit it often. But even in that, Peter's legacy continues. Peter's daughter Kelly is taking on the role of director to aid the foundation and support families and their loved ones. She mentioned she's not her father, but she looks a lot like him, while his son is a lawyer and partner at the law firm, and he assisted one of the families during the trial. The depth of the void that his legacy left behind is a vast and endless chasm, an unfillable void that swallows the very essence of being.
Peter Rudolf de Vries zal voor altijd de geschiedenisboeken ingaan, net zoals jullie. Maar over mijn vader zullen ze schrijven dat het een held was.